10 points to Gryffindor. I'm Griffin dorking around in the Griffin Spitfire. This is the Mark 14. This is one of two of the British Tech Tree Griffins that is at 5.3. The other one's the Mark 18. They are effectively, you might as well just regard them as more or less the same plane. They are slightly, very slightly different. And the differences are not really worth like getting into because it's so minor that it just doesn't matter. Anyways, if you watched my video on Japanese planes and specifically kind of the Ki 84, we did kind of come to the conclusion that the Griffin Spitfire occupies more or less the same kind of niche as the Ki 84. Basically, it's performance-wise, it's one of those planes that is a good jack-of-all-trades plane where you have very good turn rate, but not necessarily the best of everything. You have pretty good acceleration, pretty good climb rate, pretty good speed, but everything that you kind of fight does have a little bit of stuff it can do against you that has kind of methods for counterplay, but the methods of counterplay are very kind of limited, especially in regards to things like BF-109s, especially the G models, the G6, all the way through the G14. They basically, this plane is kind of their kryptonite because you just kind of end up being them, but slightly better in every way. Really, the only thing that holds back the Spitfires, in most people's opinions, is kind of like the flight model being really touchy. The Griffin isn't really as unstable as, say, like the regular Merlin Spitfires, the ones with different engines, the earlier ones. This one does handle a lot more like a normal plane, a lot more the way that you'd expect it to. But even with this one, when you're flying the thing, when you're out playing it in the game, you kind of ignore the fact that the kind of back half of the travel for your stick exists because it's really easy to get a little bit too greedy with the plane and wing stall. This is one of the reasons you don't really see a lot of Griffins and a lot of LF9s really kind of dominating the game compared to things like the Ki 84, because the Ki 84 has the same performance, but it's a lot easier to kind of maximize that performance, especially for newer players, because Ki 84 is extremely intuitive insofar that as soon as you get the combat flaps out, you just kind of hold the stick all the way to the back and the plane just does what it needs to do. The Griffin handles more like a plane, more like has some quirks to it, but it's not really unmanageable. I didn't really spend a lot of time getting to like know the plane so much insofar as like, oh yes, I can optimize the AOA and whatnot. No, I do this thing. I've got like this custom mission. I'm going to show it to you guys at some point, probably in the LF9 video that I'm working on. That I'll go in, play against a bunch of bots, get like a feeling for the plane at low speed, and then work from there and then go into a match. It's a good way to practice aiming. It's a good way to practice just kind of like doing the flight stuff and not choking at the last second. Because I know a lot of guys, they get into the game and they're like, okay, I'm going to like go out, I'm going to learn sim in the live environment. And you fly around for like 5 minutes, you get into a dogfight, and then you wing stall the plane, and then you lose. You're like, oh, that's not a really good learning curve. So kind of practicing against bots of just getting used to flying the plane at low speeds and through its whole entire speed range is a pretty helpful thing to do. But that's a topic for a different video. As far as the Griffin goes, this is a game on Tunisia. This was what I consider kind of, it's an atypical match because there is a lot of kills, there's a lot of action in it, but it's also not against the most like experienced players in the game. So this isn't a game where Idaho Bookworm and his whole entire crew is on the enemy team where you got to like lock in and do everything perfectly all the time and really maintain your energy and maintain like perfect situational awareness. But there is like a squad on the enemy team. They are trying to work together. It does make things a little bit more interesting, and it allows me to kind of like showcase the capabilities of the plane, or at least give like a pretty reasonable expectation. Now, as far as the plane performance goes, I did pop up the two charts in the beginning. The first chart is the one that I made. I did parse it down a little bit. I have it set up in an Excel spreadsheet so I can click a couple buttons and reduce the number of planes on it, but that's just kind of to give you a general idea of like, hey, the plane's reasonably fast, turns reasonably well. It is kind of just a straight downgrade to the LF9 Spitfire. The LF9 Spitfire is more capable, better accelerating, better climbing, better turning, slightly faster at sea level. This plane, a lot of people say it's the high altitude Spitfire. There's a little bit of truth to that. I did include the power to weight ratio chart as well, kind of comparing it to some of the peers where you can see how power degrades with altitude. And basically what happens is The LF9 and a bunch of other planes, they start with like really powerful engines or really powerful optimized for like very low altitude, and they lose a good bit of power. Then the supercharger gear switches and they gain a little bit of that power back. This plane starts at kind of lower power, peaks around like 3,000 meters, and then declines all the way to about 5,000, and then the gear switches, or you switch the gears, and then it starts to regain its power. So if the game was really centered around fighting in that like 6,000 to 8,000 meter range, it would be true that this would be a high altitude Spitfire. Although it's not really high altitude, it's just kind of a little bit better optimized for that against planes that are not optimized for that like altitude band, that altitude range. Unfortunately, that's not the way Sim is. In Sim, most of your fighting is going to take place in that 3,000 meters and underneath bracket. You will get some engagements that start at 5,000, 6,000 if you really look for them, but a lot of the times those altitude ranges are still going to end up going to the deck. Usually, the guy gets defensive, sees you're a Spitfire, nose down, powers away, and tries to run. The only planes that actually do try to fight you are things like KD4s, A6Ms. Japanese planes will typically try to turn fight you. Planes like the BF-109 and F4, even though on the chart they don't look too good, they don't look too hot. That chart was using sustained numbers from AirRB and an SB. I did bump them up, I think, by a degree, but I'd have to go back and check. Where, because an SB, you can pull harder, and the forward slats on the 109 will deploy. The turn rates on the 109s are probably a little bit better than is what's represented in the chart, and the chart isn't something to just go by as like gospel truth of like, oh, well, it's higher on this chart, therefore it wins, because the power to weight ratio as the plane climbs and as other planes lose power to weight ratio, like something like the Yak-3 U is very, very strong at super low altitude, but if you start your engagement at 3,000 meters, that is, you might have a turn rate advantage. You might have a more noticeable advantage, especially even in terms of acceleration and whatnot, where even at low altitude, that fight, when I've ran it in the past in like a controlled setting and a dueling setting, is still pretty close. If it starts at 3,000 meters, it might actually be more in favor of the Spitfire. But that doesn't mean also, in the same regard, that you need to like get out your flow chart and like be doing like mathematical graphs to figure out how to engage enemies, because it's really easy to overthink this, and you don't really have to. It's nice to know the info, but the info itself is not going to really be the decisive factor in whether or not you do good in the plane. Doing good in the plane really comes down to prop fundamentals, understanding kind of like areas that people congregate on the map, your altitude, your energy state, what you can do with the energy that you have, because this plane does dive pretty well. And it is reasonably quick on the deck. It's nothing like to write home about in comparison to like the P-51 D-30 or anything like that, but it is reasonably quick. It does all of the things that all of the really annoying turning planes do that can close the gap. Things like the RE-2005 and G-56 are about on par with you as far as turning performance go, but you do have a speed advantage, do have a climb advantage over them in a lot of cases. So overall, it is a good plane, and it's kind of actually nerfed in comparison to its historical counterpart, because I think the one that we have in game right now, the Mark 14, is running, I want to say 18 pounds of boost, when in real life around like 1944 or so, they upped the boost to all the way from like, I think 20 PSI all the way up to 24. At some point during like 1945, they were actually using Griffin Spitfires to chase down buzz bombs, V1s. But overall, the plane's like pretty good as far as like maintaining control of it. One of the things that I do is I put like a little bit of negative trim in, so like minus 5-10%. That just kind of makes the plane feel more stable, where I have to kind of hold back on my stick a little bit to maintain a turn, because usually at 0% trim, and this is especially noticeable on other Spitfires, is you don't really like pull the stick back and then hold it back. You like pull the stick back, set your AOA, and then relax it, and the plane kind of like flies itself that way. It's a little counterintuitive for most people, and that's why people actually struggle in it. The other thing that people struggle with is they get behind a guy and they don't realize that they're sitting near their maximum kind of angle of attack. You don't have to pull that far back at low speeds to really be sitting there, where the plane starts to shudder, the plane starts to shake, and they'll get behind a guy and like the pull just a little bit too hard, and the wing drops down, and like, oh no, like this guy behind me basically did that. He probably got a little bit greedy on Roger here, and didn't have the best time in the world. Anyways, we did take like a little bit of damage in that engagement, so we're gonna like wander back to the airfield probably. The other thing that I've noticed about this plane is it does seem to take damage pretty well as far as in regards to some of its components. Obviously, like wing root crits in Sim are a nightmare. Wingtips getting blown off are also kind of a nightmare. And as you take damage, you have to be kind of cognizant of like how the plane handles when it's damaged. Like a black wing root is going to be very abysmal for dogfighting. It's also going to mean that you're going to like be near that wing stall area where you don't want to be in it for very long. But as long as you're taking damage to the fuselage, as long as you're not losing like your elevator, it seems to handle it okay. It's nothing special. Now, as far as the flaps go, this thing has only 2 flap settings, as raised and as landings. And the landing flaps are really good at very, very, very low speeds. You can kind of press them; they almost deploy almost instantly. And if you feel like you're at low speed, so like below, I would say below 250 kilometers per hour, to be honest, just to be like on the safe side. But I don't have the flap rip speeds like on a spreadsheet or anything like off the top of my head. They can help you get around your turn just a little bit quicker at low speeds, and it can also kind of delay a wing stall. So a lot of times I'll be like up almost at super low speeds in a stall, and I want to pull just a little bit more, and I'll deploy the flaps. And instead of like pulling a little bit more, I kind of just rely on the flaps to actually just kind of lift me up. It's kind of like in the same regards of the way that I think about like FW190 flaps. With FW190 flaps, you deploy them, and they don't really like allow you to pull more. You just pull the same, but the plane just kind of like does this thing where it like almost like just lifts itself up, where it does turn better that way, or it turns better for a short period of time, because flaps don't, unless they're Fowler flaps, will actually kill your airspeed. But if you're already at super low airspeed, getting like that extra bit of lift is a pretty good idea. Even in this case, though, and this is what I was saying earlier, is like this plane is kind of kryptonite for your late model 109s, where this guy's trying to run away, he's trying to run to his airfield. I have some damage, but I'm actually able to more or less keep up with him and catch up to him, and he's not able to get back to his airfield. So you still feel like you feel the same really annoying, obnoxious niche as the T-84. We come back in, we get Thinnest again. Old Thinnest here. He's pretty experienced, I think. Like a lot of people are like, oh, this guy's terrible because he can't beat me in a duel. Like I for random players, I have lower standards as far as like, if a guy's competent, I will recognize competency regardless of like whether or not I like the guy or not. Like I don't have to like the guy to go, yeah, he's okay. He's like Thinnest is a good enough, interesting fight that like I don't feel too bad saying like, hey, this guy's like okay. He's one of the more okay prop players. Nothing to write home about. Not like, oh yeah, this guy's like Biscuit Destroyer. He's the GOAT. Because Biscuit Destroyer can't say enough good things about how he's taken flying prop planes to like an actual art form. But that's I gotta stop. Gotta stop glazing the old Korean guy. It's just too much, man. Speaking of too much, the engine overheating on this thing is not as bad as the LF, but it does tend to, on these hotter maps, it will get hot and it will stay hot. So, usually run manual engine controls, usually run with like around 100% radiator open in climbs. And then when I'm like up to speed, you can shut it off a little bit and you'll be fine. Guns wise, I run 800 meters convergence on everything, and I run vertical targeting. That may not be the most optimal for the Spitfire. Maybe a 400 meter thing would be better, but I don't really worry about it because like I've just gotten used to the settings that I have, so changing them all the time really isn't my forte. We get a 190 here. The 190 is another plane that you just kryptonite to it. You're faster than all the A models. The Dora, I think, can technically outrun you on the deck and outrun you at certain altitudes, but because of your plane, and the Dora is kind of sad because it does get zoned out by a lot of things. The Dora at 5.7 fighting like a Corsair. The Corsair is just straight up better in more or less every way. So it's an okay plane. I've been flying it a little bit recently. I can get a little bit of like use out of it, but overall, kind of like from a analytical perspective, at 5.7 plane's not very good. We're gonna come in here. We got a furball. And we got Hello Roger here running around in the P51. This guy, you always got to look out for him because he's actually one of the more experienced players. He's another one of the guys that's like thinnest. He's actually one of these really old guys that's been around for basically ever. And usually at 5.0, he's in a K84. I was hoping this game he'd be in a K84 so I'd get like a couple of like good fights against it. But he's in a P51, a Chinese one. And I'll go for him because usually what happens is he's pretty good about staying fast or fast enough to be able to try to run away. And this plane here can't catch up to a P51 unless it's coming out of a dive, unless you already have basically a running start at it. So I can run him down, at least for the time being, get him out of the way for a bit, and then focus more on the 109s. And the 109 guys, they're coming in, they're turn fighting, they're doing their thing, and they're not necessarily, it's not necessarily wrong what they're doing, because you got to think about it in the kind of greater context of, well, we can run them down, and if you get ran down, you're forced to turn. Otherwise, in Sim, the way to play the 109 would be to kind of like perch above everyone else and try to perpetually boom and zoom everything, or provoke stall traps. Although provoking stall traps in Sim is a lot harder than it is in ARB because you're not, because of the lack of markers, you don't have the ability to determine distances easily, and a lot of times guys just like, you'll go up and they'll just ignore you. A lot of times guys don't fall for those like accelerated like high angle attack like stall traps where you pull the guy up in a vertical spiral and he stalls out and you drop down on him. And in all honesty, what I found in Sim is that based on my RB experience of kind of like countering guys that play like that, I'm able to do a lot more in Sim against guys while having an energy disadvantage than a lot of people would realize. And that's also why, like, when I play a plane, most of the time I will go up to 3,000 meters, I'll go up to 4,000 if the situation calls for it, but against most people I'm pretty comfortable with even a plane like this, that there are things that outturn it. There are situations that you don't want to be in, like a Zero popping up behind me right now, diving in from like 800 meters or whatever as I'm cooling my engine at 300 kph would be a death sentence. But as long as I have around 1,000 meters of altitude below me or 500 meters, as long as I'm cognizant of where I'm at on the map compared to most other players, you can get back up to speed and have some kind of defensive option. Like, when I get a guy behind me, if I know that he's going to catch up to me, I will dive a little bit to gain speed, but I'll do a brake turn so that when we merge, so when the paths of the plane crosses, we're not just, like, nose to tail with him, like, sniffing my butthole. Because even something like a Zero, you can dogfight it for just a little bit, you force a bad angle on it, and then you can dive out with, like, the little bit of altitude that you have, and actually use your plane's better acceleration to get away in those situations. There's other planes like the Yak 3U that is a 6.0 plane where the Yak 3U at low altitude is a big threat, and you usually don't run into a lot of them though. Usually I don't play this plane at 6.0 because at 6.0 there's the Mark 22 Spitfire, which is kind of the same thing with just more cannons. I think a little bit more engine power, maybe a little bit lighter. I'd have to go back to the graphs and actually look at what the Mark 22 does differently. But also 6.0 for Allied versus Axis kind of matchmakers. Those games don't last that long, or they usually end up being a lot of JU 288s and stuff. So it's kind of like finding a game like this is actually pretty rare for me as far as finding one that's kind of active for a long duration where I can get a lot of action out of it and kind of talk through a little bit of the way I approach things. And usually the way I approach things is I'm going to try to dogfight, I'm going to try to interact with the furball, but I'm not going to try to pin my elevator and pin my speed to like 300 kph right away. Like, you got to look at the angles, you got to look at kind of the situation you're in, where going in and out of the furball is a better idea, but kind of minimizing the time that you spend outside of the furball. Trying to like set up for kills where you're trying to look for the ideal kill is also like counterproductive. So you gotta like you gotta balance it. You gotta kind of figure out a play style that's balanced and work around that. And you saw that a couple times where I'm fighting a guy and I'll see like a Japanese plane come in, I'll see like a Zero come in, I'm like, okay, I need to be looking for an escape route, and then the Zero will glue himself to like the LF9 Spitfire, and I turn around and I'm like, okay, he's glued to him, now I can come back. And as soon as I realize that he's glued to a different guy, I can turn around and come back. If he's glued to me, do some evasive maneuvers, kind of roll around a little bit, try to make things hard for him, smash that cover me call, and get him to come at me. And here we are again, we got Hello Roger here, and we're using that altitude that we have to try to catch up to him. We do slot in behind him. It doesn't look like he necessarily notices us. If he does, he's going to try to run away. And this is one of the things that's nice about the plane is the cannons used to be abysmal dog water garbage. They're quite good now. I would say probably 2/3 of the rounds are good, and then 1/3 are just marshmallows, which is better than the old like 2/3 marshmallows and 1/3 a crit kind of chance. But here we go. We get a Japanese plane behind us. It's an A7, and that's one of those planes that we can't turn with. We don't want to stick around next to him for that long and just let him sit behind us, because he was close enough that we didn't really want to have to deal with that. So we kind of go out, Spitfire gets behind him, we're going to come back, and as he's kind of pinned in this flat turn here, he's pretty vulnerable. Like these guys, like yeah, you don't turn fight a Japanese plane, but turn fighting a Japanese plane is setting like this guy up to basically be kind of a free kill, because a slow plane is a slow plane, and the A7 is a rather large plane. It's kind of like comically large, which makes it, being a turn fighter, actually really, really funny. It's like they took a lot of inspiration from like the F6F and stuff like the P-47 and made like a really, really large orange plane. But the A7 is just one of those planes that you don't want to turn fight it for too long, or you don't want to turn fight it when you start at a disadvantage. If you start nose to nose, head on, depending on energy states, it's worth it for a turn or two, see what the guy does, and then if you don't have a chance to kind of extend and get away, you have to dive out. You can take advantage of the fact the plane doesn't roll that well, and you can kind of play a little bit more defensively that way, but kind of consistently getting away from the A7M. It's also one of those planes that once it gets into a dive is reasonably fast, where you don't want to be dealing with guys at 250 meters off your tail while you're slow. We come in, we get thinnest. I put some damage into him. I didn't think he was gonna flat spin all the way to the ground. I thought he maybe had like the capability to recover. So I was like, oh, I'll put like a little bit of damage on him, try to get like a wingtip or something like that to maybe force him to not be able to recover. It does work, but I did get the credit for the kill. And I didn't really. I think I told the guy in chat, I'm like, I didn't mean to get that one. But 109's, he's up here. We shoot, we miss. We're gonna do a lag displacement roll here. Just kind of go up. We know we have more speed. We hold a little bit of lag. We almost shoot out in front. We get that like nasty little wing stall there, but as long as you're kind of cognizant of it, as long as you kind of have your screen shake setting turned up to like, I usually think I run around 50%. It might be 20 to 30%, but just enough that I can hear it in the background. Like you can hear the whooshing sound, and that's kind of like your indicator of like how close you are to wing stall. And so as long as I hear like a little bit of whooshing and not a bunch of whooshing, it's usually fine. And it didn't take that long to get a feel for the plane. We're kind of sitting at like, I don't know, a whole bunch of kills at this point. It's only like 22 minutes in. I am skipping around the video a little bit. Like I am cutting out some of the travel time. Like I'm not putting in every time I go back to base. And this was a game that I joined initially, got like 5 kills. Was like, this one's not very competitive. It's not very interesting. Went and looked at a bunch of different games, and I ended up coming back to it. And this is also one of those situations where my team has a lot of presence, and the reason my team has a lot of presence is Invesco, and then like a couple of the other guys that are on my team are in a voice chat and some other random Discord coordinating together. So usually when I get into a fight, I usually have a couple of guys around me. The Y-Wing guy and I think Coffee and Wi-Fi, I think those guys are working together too. Because earlier in the video, like you see a guy with smoke on, and you got to look at when a guy pops smoke, that means that he's in a voice chat. He's telling his buddies like, I'm over here, go to the smoke kind of thing. You need to look at it and go, that's bait. That's bait. Anytime you see smoke, you're getting baited. And whether or not to take the bait, sometimes it's a good idea to take the bait, or sometimes what I do is I'll take the bait, or I'll feign taking the bait with the idea knowing that I'm getting baited, and as long as I know I'm getting baited, I can work from there. We get a 109, gets shot. We start a scissors here, and he overshoots, in front of us, and this is, as I said earlier, this plane's kind of kryptonite. This is the part where I'm gonna close the radiators and get as much speed as I can, just basically try to get behind him and close the distance just enough that if he turns, he's dead. If he runs away forever, he's also gonna be safe as long as he's a K model, but we'll shoot from a long distance. The high velocity of the rounds will scare him into turning, The only thing that I don't like about the plane is you don't really have a lot of ammo, and then the fire rate of the guns, although it helps you conserve ammo, a lot of times you'll shoot, and you'll get one round in front of the guy, one round behind the guy, just because of like the lower fire rate. Like I do prefer, like the quad cannon A&M 3 armament is kind of like the ideal props armament, but this is workable. This works fine. It is arguably better than MG151s because like the effective range is a big thing for planes that are able to be outran, having high velocity guns or having guns with a lot of ammo, like 50 cals. Like if this plane had the 650 cal tracer armament, it would be like probably peak as long as it had like as much ammo as the like a normal like P51. Would be really good. Unfortunately, the 20 bow cannons are also, they're pretty good, but low ammo. And then you got the 2 British 50 cals, which they're just American 50 cals, but the rounds are different. So you don't have the giga fire starting tracers. You just have kind of like piddly guns. 250 cals is kind of pretty, by itself is pretty mid, but you can make the plane work. Aiming it is, I wouldn't say it's easy, but I also think that they did change the way that gyroscopic sights work, where this plane doesn't have the gyroscope always on now, which I think is nice. I prefer a fixed sight. I know a lot of other people prefer fixed sights. I do like the ability to kind of turn it on and off. I need to go look at the settings though and see if it's actually possible to do. But if I recall correctly, this plane used to have just like the gyroscopic gun sight, kind of just like the like the P51, the D30 always has the gyroscope on, which is kind of off-putting, to be honest. Like it's technically good. It should be okay. It doesn't not work. It's just kind of distracting now. I do find that a fixed sight for me just tends to work better for the things that I do. But that's just kind of a personal preference thing. But big thing to notice though is in the background is I'm always climbing. I'm not just flying on the deck all the time. I'm keeping a little bit of altitude below me so I can gain the speed, so I can close off the distance with these guys. And then when I see things like wingtip vortices, like that's when I know that's a player. That's when I know that I should go and attack. This guy is in a Spitfire, but you can kind of tell it's Italian. If you run into other Spitfires, most of the time they're going to be Mark 5s, most of the time they're going to be LF Mark 9s, which means you really have to, you don't have to be careful, because usually they'll wing stall. Usually guys are a little too, they're either too aggressive on the controls, or they're too conservative on the controls, or they're not really getting the most performance out of the plane. That's why people don't maul about Spitfires being overpowered nearly as much as they worry about things like Japanese planes, because as I said kind of earlier in the video, Japanese planes getting 100% of your turn performance is basically as simple as pushing a button and turning in one direction. Whereas the Spitfires, it takes a little bit more effort, but even with that more effort, you do get a good advantage in overall performance, I think, at least compared to the true Japanese turn fighters. Like the A6M5 would be the thing that I compared it to in the chart, I think, if I did put a 0 on the chart. And the J2M2 is not really a pure turn fighter. It kind of does the same thing as the LF9, but at a lower BR, while being kind of like a halfway between an F Mark 9 and an LF Mark 9. J2M2 is another really strong plane. I haven't shown it on the channel recently because I don't like flying 3.7 props all the time. It really depends on what people are doing for the day, what kind of games I can find, and what I'm feeling. Like I've flown enough J2M2 in the past. I'm just kind of like, I'm trying to give some time and effort to planes that people don't normally fly, planes that people don't normally take the time to appreciate. And this is just, I like this plane because it looks good. It is probably the best looking fighter of the war as far as the British are concerned. Maybe aesthetics wise, I do really like the FW190As. Like that plane is not very great. It's not very good in War Thunder, but I do play it quite a bit. It's one of my more played props in sim, and it's just because it looks cool. But we get a friendly here. The red 190 there's a friendly, and we're just gonna come in on the 109. And this is beating 109s with a Spitfire is not hard. It is pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy, and you just kind of, as I said earlier, I keep bringing back the point. You just kind of do everything better. We get behind this guy. We're getting ready for the shot, and we take some bullets. And because we took some bullets, we're going to have to be a little bit more evasive. We're missing the wingtip. And this is what I said earlier. This plane does seem to handle damage at least a lot better than I thought it would. Like, usually you would think that because the Spitfire is already like an unstable piece of crap, that it would fall out of the sky as soon as you lost, like, I don't know, half the wing. And that's really not the case. Now, I'm not going to win this fight. I'm not really trying to win it, but I am trying to make this guy a little bit frustrated, cost him some energy, and also set my teammates up for success, because I have a big black smoke cloud behind me, and as long as this guy's distracted, he's going to be stuck at 200 kph at basically not a lot of altitude, where maybe I don't get him, but somebody else probably will. I am struggling to keep the plane up. Like, I'm trying to dogfight him with no wing, and it's almost working. He hasn't quite shot out in front of me. He hasn't quite done the thing where he flies into my guns, and that's a good thing. That's good. But our engine is cooking itself. We're just kind of angled off, and I think at this point we're gonna get a friendly behind him, and the friendly's gonna be able to shoot him down. And we're just going to continue to limp the plane back. Like, my goal right now is to try to get it back to base, try to, like, skid land it in, maybe just milk the engine just barely enough to get back. Because, like, I do this because it's cool. It's fun to do this. It's fun to, like, struggle. I should give the guy the kill credit. He's going to get the credit anyways when I die, when I hit the ground. But it's fun to do. It's like a nice little interesting kind of mini game to, you know, keep the mind occupied, because, like, just going in and fragging everything or doing exactly the same thing every time, it's kind of like, you know, it gets a little bit boring. But in order to control the plane without a wing, I'm using a lot of right rudder, a lot of rudder input. The rudder's kind of keeping it level here, and because the plane's pretty good, because the plane's pretty durable, we're still going to be able to skid land this in here. We're not going to make it back to the runway, unfortunately, but we're gonna keep up the struggle. We're gonna have the real cinematic ending for Dunkirk or whatever, and basically Tom Hardy winning at everything, breaking the Batman, doing all of the good things, and it being British. I think Tom Hardy's British. I don't really say that much pop culture nonsense. But we skidded in. Oh, Shake It gets kill credit, but Shake It also got cleaned up by a friendly. And I wasn't really didn't spam cover me enough to you know, maybe get someone to come save me sooner, but it is what it is. We go back, we take off, and at this point the game is basically over. Like, the prop games for tickets, like, it seems like you get to like halfway tickets, and then they just start collapsing, like it's like logarithmic ticket bleed. We get this 109 in the head-on. It's the same guy. This guy's been sticking around. Like, I really do. I enjoy it when players stick around. I do enjoy it when, like, it does feel like people are trying, as opposed to, oh no, the enemy's firing back at me, I can't play the game anymore. Because if everyone does that, then there's no game. It might as well just turn into a single player versus bots, because you know, the ego hurts. And this is a game that this game boosted my ego quite a bit, because, like, you go like 22-4 and just kind of actually get a showcase that the plane is good. It feels good to do good. Like, that's kind of normal, but also, in order to, like, really appreciate doing good, you also probably need to know what it is like to do bad, or know what it's like to struggle, and kind of know where you sit in the greater kind of perspective. Which isn't to say, wow, just get good, just be good, and you need to beat your head against the wall to get good, but there are situations in this game that, like, you can learn from. There's situations in every game that you should be able to learn from. Like, I died a couple of times from quote-unquote mistakes. I don't really count them as mistakes so much insofar as that I need to never do that again. It's like I took a risk, and sometimes you get punished for the risk. You go out vertical, you're like, I'm going to stall this guy out, and the second guy that you don't see comes in. That's just, like, that is the nature of the sim mode. That's the nature of the game, and it's, like, not an inherent flaw. Like, a lot of people will sometimes treat that like a bad thing. Not really the case. Hello, Roger, another guy. He stuck around for this one, and usually he gets you kill him a couple of times, and he'll leave probably after about, I'd say about the 4th death. He stuck around for this one, so good for him. Like, give a little shout out to this old as fuck guy, even though I do make fun of him. I think he has me blocked, because I'm like, I think at one point I was like, hello, Roger, more like, goodbye, Roger. get another guy. He comes in, he merges with us, and that's the thing I was saying earlier, though. Like when I know that a guy's going to catch up to me, I try to make sure that he doesn't just get to like sit behind me on my 6, give him a severe angle to work from, and as long as the angle's bad initially, usually because of my dogfighting experience, usually because like I've done a good bit of like 1 versus 1 dueling, and I understand the planes well enough and understand trajectories well enough that even at a bad energy state, I have something to work with. Although this is a 190, and 190s are sad. Actually, this isn't a 190. It's a Key 84. It looks like a 190. I thought it was in my preview thing, but it is not. He actually comes in, and I gave him a bad angle, and even though his plane might turn about the same as mine because he had that bad angle, he didn't play it. I didn't play the trajectory really well. Didn't really know what he was doing. We're able to pretty easily win that one, which is good, because it means that like the whole dueling video, the whole dueling premise of my last one was not just something taken in a vacuum where it doesn't have like any like practical application, because it's really easy to do like a lot of analytical things and then not showcase the practical side of things and not actually try to go out and apply it. This game, I think, is a good example of taking a thing that we said earlier and then applying it to the random game. Now, that doesn't mean that every game that I go into, I'm like, okay, I'm playing tonight. I'm going to just do 22 and 4 on demand every time, because I am taking risks. Dogfighting in any plane is a risk, because you do get slow. You are open to third parties. But this time it worked. A lot of times it'll work. A lot of times it's a lot more interesting than playing like a pure boom and zoom kind of setup. And that's why I do it.